in the book, you mentioned the 4 dimensions of success. What are they?
Yes. Goals, and I'll expand on each one for a second. Goals, stakeholders, resources, and time frames. Okay? Each of those has 3 elements, 3 parts. And the point of the 4 goals and the 3 elements is that all of these things have to work together in order for you to get a successful program or organization. And in an environment where things change all the time, resources may change, you may have to change your goal. Okay? Your stakeholders, such as interest groups, the AARP, American Association of Retired Persons, or one of the American Veterans Association, if they change their position, then you may have to change the time frame for what you're going to do, because you may need to reach more people, more veterans. So the first of the 4 is be clear on what the goals are. And the second is be clear about who your stakeholders are. There are always 3 levels of stakeholders. Who are the stakeholders internal to your organization? Who are the people who care? Is the secretary going to be able to support you, and is she an important stakeholder for your program? And then in the government broadly, in the Congress and so forth, who are the people who really matter from a stakeholder standpoint? And lastly, nationally, do you have the interest groups covered? The third one is resources, which is people, process, and technology. If you can't, let's pick up, if you can't get the right people to do the website, and the process will take twice as long as the deadline, then the technology is not going to save you, and you have to go back and change the goal. If you can't change the goal, you may have to change the time frames, which is the 4th of the key determinants of success. And quite simply, short term, mid-term, long term. Sometimes you can satisfy the political needs in the short term by getting the right appropriations, and then achieve some other goals a year or 2. In a political environment, I tend to think of the short term as being, what does this administration need before the next congressional election, which is 18 to 24 months. In the mid-range, what does this administration need to be successful before the president has to run for re-election in 4 years? And in the long term, what do they want to accomplish over the 8 years that is an outcome that they can do? And the reason I call them the 4 dimensions of success, even though they sometimes seem kind of self-evident, is that people forget how intimately they have to interact with one another, and they watch one thing change, like the technology isn't going to come online in time, without realizing that that requires that you go back and change people's goal or change the time frame. So that's the 4 dimensions of success. You also have to have some, there's a reason I call it a playbook. You also have to have, it's very complicated if you just have to do 12 things all the time. You have to organize them in such a way that you have, like any sports team or any team, that you get the right starting point with an offensive strategy, that you figure out what your strategy will be as it relates to goals and time frames and interest groups. Then you have to have a plan to execute it, and you have to do it well. And then so the book addresses the steps in these 4 dimensions to be done in areas that have to do with getting ready to have a good strategy and an offense. How do you execute well? And then, because somebody's always going to attack you, what kind of defense are you going to play? And I think that's also part. I address the 4 dimensions, but also the 3 phases.